So you may have already heard about the best duty stations in the United States Army as well as the worst duty stations, and now you're ready to decide what Army duty station do I want to try to get sent to. Well, stick around. What's up, my friends? Welcome to an all-new video. I'm U.S. Army veteran Christopher Chaos, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about some possible duty stations that maybe you could be looking at. Maybe you're getting ready to re-enlist. Maybe you're getting ready to join the Army, and you want to know what duty stations I want to put on my dream sheet when I get to AIT or OSIT to try to possibly get assigned to. One thing you also need to be aware of before we kind of start diving into the different duty stations is that I am not going to be listing every single possible Army installation that there is in the entire world, as some of those installations are maybe more for reserve units, maybe very select for only specific MOSs and very hard to get. So I'm mainly going to be talking about more of the common installations, the ones that are usually typical that you can possibly request for when you're first coming into the Army. Some of these other ones that are maybe more obscure may take a lot more effort. You may have to specifically re-enlist for them, and then you still have to hope that there's a slot for your MOS. So don't think this is every single possible installation there is for the United States Army, but we're going to be covering a lot of the main ones. Now, if you are not familiar with my channel, well, I like to educate people about the United States Army, maybe give them some tips, and if that is something you're interested in and you are not yet subscribed to my channel, well, then think about hitting that subscribe button. Maybe even click on that bell to get alerts as soon as new videos go live, to include those live streams and become a part of that awesome notification platoon. So let's start talking about some possible Army duty stations that maybe you can request for, or maybe you're hoping to get assigned to. So we're gonna start off with the United States, and we'll move to some of the overseas locations. We are gonna go in alphabetical order by state, and like I said, hit on some of the common ones. So we're gonna start off with Alabama. Alabama, as far as ones that are more common kind of duty stations, that's gonna be probably Fort Rucker and Fort McClellan. Other ones may be a little bit more difficult to kind of get assigned to. Moving over to Alaska, pretty much the ones they have are pretty common for people to try to get assigned to. That's Fort Greely, Fort Richardson, and Fort Wainwright. I also noticed on this list just now that they don't list J-Bear. That's what is kind of commonly referred to as the joint base that they have in Alaska, but that's also a very common one as well. For Arizona, the primary one is going to be Fort Huachuca, but that one is actually a pretty hard one to get. That one is mainly a intel type of installation, but there's other MOSs that have to support those units, but the slots are just kind of limited, so it might be a little harder for other MOSs to get one of those slots. That was one of the installations I actually tried to get stationed at because I wanted to get closer to California, and for my MOS at the time, 88 Mike, it was super hard. There was only a few slots available and they were already full. If you're looking to get stationed in California, well, most likely you're gonna have to try to go for Fort Irwin, and you may have seen that list that I did of as far as the worst duty stations in the Army, but again, it is personal preference. Some people love it, some people hate it. You gotta kind of leave it up to your own experience to decide if you're in one of those categories, but Fort Irwin is gonna be the primary one for California. If you're looking at a station in Colorado, well, that's gonna be Fort Carson, Colorado. That is actually the last duty assignment that I had while I was in the United States Army, and I currently work there as a civilian training soldiers. Now for District of Columbia, they have Walter Reed Medical Center. Now, you may have heard that name before, but that one is probably a very hard one to get. That one's gonna have a lot of medical individuals, probably higher ranking medical individuals, but that's not to say that they don't have some of the other smaller kind of roles, because they probably still need those. You probably also need some support elements to support, day-to-day functions of the units, but those slots are probably gonna be very limited. Now for the state of Georgia, they have several different installations that you could potentially end up with. The first one I mentioned is Fort Benning. Now, the key thing you need to also note is that installations that also have basic training, OSIT, or AITs, some people choose to not really want to be at those locations because they usually come with a lot of restrictions. So it just kind of depends on, how badly you want to be there, if you're okay with these restrictions. Usually the restrictions are kind of come because there are going to be training soldiers there. There's gonna be soldiers going through basic or AIT or OSIT or whatever, and usually the units are pretty strict as far as what kind of interaction you can have, if any at all, with those training soldiers. And some people don't like those restrictions because it makes it to where, hey, I can't go here because that place is always filled with training soldiers and it's gonna potentially cause me to get in trouble because those people are gonna be in that area, so I wanna try to avoid that area. So that kind of comes into play. Plus you have sometimes, drill sergeants walking around, and some people don't want to be around other drill sergeants, even though you're not in basic training anymore, or OSIT or whatever. So that's kind of a key thing, but be aware Fort Benning could potentially be an option. Now also in Georgia, you have Fort Stewart, Fort Gordon, and then a few other ones, but those are kind of the more common ones for Georgia. If you want to be stationed in Hawaii, that's gonna be commonly the Schofield Barracks or Fort Shafter. For the state of Kansas, you can possibly get stationed at Fort Riley or maybe even Fort Leavenworth. Now, I have actually been stationed at Fort Riley. That one's a little bit more of a common one. Fort Leavenworth is primarily, a training installation, but also has the prison for the United States Army. So that one's gonna be a little bit more of a challenge, a little bit less slots that are probably gonna become available for getting Fort Leavenworth. So it might be a little harder to request, probably a little bit more common if you wanted to try to get Fort Riley, but you may have seen that also on the list of duty stations that don't rank very well. If you're looking to get stationed in Kentucky, well, the possible choices are Fort Campbell as well as Fort Knox. If you're looking to get stationed in Louisiana, well, there's probably only one option for you. That's the only one that's there, which is Fort Polk. So be aware of that. It came in at number 1 as far as worst duty stations, but that doesn't necessarily mean you'll hate it. Everybody's opinions may be different. As far as Maryland, some of the more commonly known ones that I've heard of is Aberdeen Proving Grounds and Fort Meade. Not a lot of people I've known been stationed in those areas, so it might still be a little bit of a challenge though. If you're looking to get stationed in Missouri, well, that's Fort Leonard Wood, and that is a training installation as well. You may also know it as Fort Lost in the Woods, but that one is the available installation for Missouri. New Jersey has a few options, but the most common one that I've heard people going to is Fort Dix. If you're looking to be in New York, well, they have Fort Drum if you don't mind the cold, and then they also have the West Point Academy, but for people being assigned to the West Point Academy, that's probably some individuals that have to support the units and operations there, probably limited on slots, so that might be a little difficult to get assigned to West Point. For North Carolina, you have Fort Bragg. For the state of Oklahoma, you have Fort Seal, but that's also a training installation, so you will have drill sergeants and soldiers in training in that location. South Carolina has Fort Jackson, also commonly referred to as Relax in Jackson. Again, also a basic training location. The state of Texas has several, but some of your common ones are gonna be obviously Fort Hood, you have Fort Bliss, and then you also have Fort Sam Houston. That one's mainly a lot of medical stuff, but again, you have other MOSs that support those medical units and everything that goes on there, just probably gonna be limited on slots. Now, Virginia has quite a few different installations in Virginia as well. Your more common ones can be like Fort Eustis, Fort Lee, maybe Fort Myer. There's a few other ones too, probably a little bit more of a challenge to get assigned there, but those are more of your common ones for Virginia. And then the last one for the United States is going to be Fort Lewis, which is in Washington. Now let's kind of talk briefly a little bit about some of the more international ones, some overseas locations you could possibly request for. There are a ton of different Army installations, small, big, that are kind of spread out throughout the world, all right? So I'm gonna go through some of these overseas locations, but try to kind of stick to ones that are a little bit easier for you to kind of request for. Even some of these are gonna be a little bit of a challenge, but there are some really, really remote ones, things you're not gonna really get assigned to anyways. Like, on this list, obviously it lists like Afghanistan and Australia and stuff like that. Those are not very common ones. I mean, Afghanistan's more of a deployment anyways, but Australia is not a very common one. And then a lot of the other locations where they may have like a small installation presence or some kind of Army presence somewheres that possibly you can go to, it's not gonna be somewhere so you're gonna be able to like re-enlist for or request for when you're asking for a duty assignment in AIT or an OSIT. So for overseas assignments, I'm only gonna really hit on the countries that are places you can request for, and even some of these are still a little bit of a challenge. Now, when I mention these countries, you're not gonna get to specifically pick which camp or which installation in that country you go to. It's gonna be more of a thing where maybe you're requesting for Germany, and they're gonna send you to Germany, but then they're gonna put you in a unit that needs your MOS. So you can end up in any camp or any installation that is in Germany based on needs of the Army, but you'll at least get to be in that country. Obviously, first one, Germany, all right? A lot of people say they love being in Germany because of how easy it is to travel to different locations. Germany is a more common one that you can possibly request for as an overseas assignment, but where you go in Germany really just depends on your MOS and where they need you. Italy is also a possibility, but a lot of people in like my top 5 duty assignments video gave me a little bit of flack for not mentioning Italy. That's because that one is a very difficult one to get. You can possibly re-enlist for it and maybe get if there's a slot available to you, but if you're probably trying to come in the Army and try to go to Italy, your chances are probably pretty low. Not impossible, but probably pretty low as far as getting that as a first duty station. You'd probably be really lucky if you got that. Most people I've known that have ended up with Italy ended up getting it as like a second duty assignment. Maybe they re-enlisted for it, something along those lines, but Italy is a potential opportunity for you, maybe if you're looking to re-enlist, but hey, put it on your dream sheet anyways, maybe you get lucky. Another very common one is actually South Korea. People get stationed there for first duty assignments, maybe they re-enlist to go there. Sometimes you just end up coming up on orders to randomly go to Korea. They have multiple locations in Korea. Sometimes the farther south you are in Korea usually ends up being pretty good. The farther north you go, usually comes with a lot more restrictions and everything like that. So South Korea is a potential duty assignment you could try to request for or re-enlist for, or could even just get assigned to. Now, the last one I mentioned on here is Japan. Japan is still a pretty tough one to kind of get. The more common branches that end up in Japan are like your Navy, your Marines, even Air Force. Army is actually a fairly difficult one. There's not, I don't think anybody that I've known that actually been stationed in Japan, but they do have Army installations, they do have Army units in Japan, so that would probably be more of a thing. Maybe you're trying to re-enlist, and if they have a slot for your MOS in Japan, then maybe you can get that. Probably not gonna be lucky enough to get that as a first duty assignment when you're looking to put together your dream sheet in AIT or an OSIT, but that is a potential, but probably difficult duty assignment to possibly get is Japan. So those are a lot of the common ones that maybe you can try to request for, re-enlist for, whatever the case is. Maybe you can just get assigned to, whatever the case is. If you wanna see a full complete list, you can check out the link I have down in the description down below, but just be aware some of these are a little bit more remote, a little bit harder to even get. The ones I mentioned are more of your common ones, but even a few of the ones I mentioned are even still difficult ones to get as well. Now, for my individuals watching this video that are currently in the Army, maybe veterans out there, I'd love to hear down in the description down below, what are some of the duty stations you have been to, and maybe even elaborate, maybe briefly, about if you liked it, didn't like it, why not, all that kind of stuff, so that people watching this video, if they're trying to decide where I should request for, or where I should request to re-enlist to go to, then they can maybe check out the comments and see what people are saying from their experiences of being at those duty stations. In my personal experience, as far as duty stations I've been to, Fort Carson was my favorite. That was the one I enjoyed mainly because of the area. There's a lot to do in that area, a lot of great entertainment to do, so I really enjoyed Fort Carson, but that's my personal opinion. For those of you that maybe are not currently in the Army, maybe some individuals that are currently in the Army but looking to try to go somewhere else, I'd love to hear down in the comments, where do you want to go? Where is a duty assignment that you would love to be stationed at? Now also, if you'd like to carry on the conversation, in the description box down below, I have a link to the Discord channel. If you'd like to hit that up, talk to people in the community about duty assignments, the Army in general, whatever, hit that link up. There's also other links to social media and everything else down in the description box as well, so definitely check that out. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.